My child, before your thoughts rush ahead searching for answers, remain here for just a little while, because not every tear begins with sadness, and not every silence means something has been lost. There are moments unfolding beyond your sight that cannot be understood all at once. This is one of those moments. Don't skip. Something important is waiting for you, and if you allow your heart to move gently instead of quickly, every word will begin to settle into place like pieces of a picture that has been forming for far longer than you realize. Somewhere, a heart has reached a place where pretending is no longer possible. The emotions that were hidden behind ordinary conversations, quiet smiles, and unfinished thoughts have become too deep to remain unspoken. Those tears are not a sign of defeat. They are the quiet release that often comes after someone finally stops running from what has been true inside them all along. Sometimes a person spends so much time convincing themselves to stay strong that they forget strength also includes allowing the heart to speak. And when that moment finally arrives, emotions appear without permission. If you have ever wondered why certain moments have felt strangely connected, why unexpected memories appeared without warning, or why peace and longing sometimes seem to arrive together, perhaps you were sensing a story that was slowly unfolding before either of you could fully understand it. Stay till the end, because what seems confusing now is leading toward a realization that is far more meaningful than a sudden answer. The one connected to your journey has begun seeing familiar moments differently. Conversations they once dismissed now echo in their thoughts. Small details they overlooked have quietly returned with new meaning. They are beginning to understand that genuine connection is rarely loud. It grows in quiet places, revealing itself only when the heart becomes willing to listen instead of resist. And that realization has stirred emotions they never expected to carry. Yet the deepest reason behind those tears has not been revealed. It is something so simple that it was almost invisible, and when that hidden piece finally comes into the light, everything they believed about you, and about themselves, will begin to change in the most unexpected way. There is something remarkable about the moment when a person can no longer hide from their own heart. It rarely happens in front of a crowd. It usually arrives in complete stillness, when the world grows quiet enough for truth to be heard. That is where this story continues. While everything around them appeared perfectly ordinary, an unexpected memory quietly found its way back. It was not dramatic. It was not loud. It was simply impossible to ignore. A familiar conversation, a forgotten smile, a moment they once considered insignificant suddenly returned with astonishing clarity. And as those memories gathered together, they formed a picture that had been incomplete for far too long. What surprised them most was not what they remembered, it was what they finally understood. They realized that some of the happiest moments in their recent life had one quiet thing in common. Whether they admitted it or not, every path their thoughts traveled eventually led back to you. They tried to explain it away. They searched for ordinary reasons. They convinced themselves it would pass with time. But the more they resisted, the more unmistakable the pattern became. Their heart was no longer asking for permission to feel. It had already chosen honesty. Don't skip, because this is where everything becomes even more meaningful. Tears do not always appear because someone is hurting. Sometimes they appear because someone finally stops fighting against hope. There is a profound difference between losing something and realizing how deeply something has already become part of you. That realization can leave even the strongest person completely speechless. They discovered that the emptiness they had been trying to understand was never caused by distance alone. It came from trying to silence feelings that refused to disappear. As these thoughts settled within them, an unexpected sense of gratitude quietly replaced confusion. Instead of asking why these emotions had grown so strong, they began appreciating what those emotions had revealed about themselves. They saw that genuine affection does not demand attention. It patiently waits until the heart is ready to recognize it. That quiet understanding became more powerful than any conversation they had ever rehearsed in their mind. Yet there remains one final piece they have not fully faced. Hidden beneath every memory is a single realization they have only begun to glimpse. It explains why today's tears felt different from every emotion that came before. Once that final truth rises to the surface, they will understand that this was never just about remembering you, it was about discovering who they had quietly become because of you. And when that realization finally reaches its fullest depth, nothing inside their heart will remain quite the same. A quiet turning point has arrived, but it does not announce itself with noise. It reveals itself through the smallest moments, the ones most people overlook. While they believed the day would unfold like every other, one simple pause changed everything. They found themselves staring into the distance for reasons they could not explain. Time continued moving, conversations continued around them, yet inside, everything had slowed. It was as though their heart had gently whispered, "There is something you still need to understand." That whisper became impossible to ignore. The tears returned, not because they felt weak, but because they finally stopped arguing with what had been growing inside them for so long. They remembered every time they tried to convince themselves that life would become simpler if they just moved on. They remembered every promise they quietly made to keep their emotions under control. Yet every attempt led them back to the same quiet truth. Some connections are not defined by how often two people speak. They are revealed by how deeply one person continues to inspire hope inside another, even through silence. Stay till the end, because the next realization carries a quiet kind of beauty. For the first time, they stopped asking, "Why can't I forget?" Instead, they asked a completely different question. Why does thinking about this person always make me become a better version of myself? That single question changed the direction of every thought that followed. They noticed they had become more patient, more thoughtful, more grateful for ordinary moments. Even their dreams for the future no longer felt centered only on themselves. Without realizing it, your place within their heart had become connected to the kind of person they wanted to become. That realization overwhelmed them. The tears that fell were no longer filled with uncertainty. They carried relief. Relief that they no longer needed to pretend these emotions were temporary. Relief that they could finally stop hiding from their own heart. And perhaps the greatest relief of all was discovering that genuine affection does not fade simply because it has been tested by time. Sometimes it grows stronger in quiet places where no one else can see it. But then something unexpected happened. Just when they believed they had finally understood everything, one small detail resurfaced, a detail they had almost forgotten. It seemed insignificant at first. A brief moment. A few simple words. An ordinary memory that had never appeared important before. Yet now it felt as though that single moment had been quietly waiting for this exact day to reveal its true meaning. Don't skip. Because that forgotten detail is about to connect every unanswered question from the beginning of this journey. And when they finally understand why that moment never truly left their heart, the tears in their eyes will carry a meaning even they never imagined possible. No one could have guessed that the smallest memory would become the one that mattered most. It was not a grand event or a life-changing conversation. It was a quiet instant that almost disappeared beneath countless ordinary days. Yet now, as they replayed it in their heart, every tiny detail felt brighter than before. The words. The expression. The feeling that lingered long after the moment had passed. They suddenly realized that what once seemed ordinary had quietly become unforgettable. That understanding brought a stillness they had never experienced before. For a long time, they believed emotions had to be explained before they could be trusted. They searched for perfect reasons, perfect timing, perfect certainty. But hearts rarely work that way. The deepest feelings often arrive gently, growing stronger with patience rather than urgency. As this truth settled within them, another tear slipped down their face, not from confusion anymore, but from gratitude. They were grateful that life had not rushed this realization. Had it arrived too early, they might never have recognized its value. Something important is waiting for you, because this is where the story begins to reveal its quiet purpose. They started looking back over every unexpected delay, every unanswered question, every season when nothing seemed to make sense. Instead of seeing broken pieces, they began seeing careful preparation. Moments they once called coincidences now appeared connected. Small encounters carried unexpected meaning. Even silence seemed different now. It no longer felt empty. It felt as though it had been gently protecting something precious until the right moment arrived. With every passing thought, they felt their heart becoming lighter. The burden they had carried was never the feeling itself, it was the fear of admitting how deeply that feeling had grown. Once that fear disappeared, peace quietly entered its place. They no longer needed to hide behind uncertainty. They no longer needed to pretend that what mattered could simply be forgotten. The tears continued, but they carried hope instead of hesitation. Then another realization arrived, softer than a whisper. They understood that throughout this journey, they had focused so much on what they wanted to say to you that they had never stopped to imagine what your own heart might have been carrying. That thought humbled them. It filled them with kindness instead of assumptions. They wished they could understand every silent chapter of your story before adding another page to their own. And just as that gentle desire settled into their heart, something unexpected happened. A single sentence they once heard long ago suddenly returned with astonishing clarity. At the time, it seemed ordinary. Today, it felt like the missing key to everything they had been trying to understand. They froze. Their tears stopped. Their breathing slowed. Because for the first time, they realized those simple words had been quietly preparing them for this exact moment. What those words truly meant has not yet fully unfolded. And when their hidden meaning finally becomes clear, the next chapter will reveal why today's tears were never the end of the story, they were the beginning of a completely new understanding. The silence that followed was unlike anything they had experienced before. It did not feel empty. It felt full. Full of thoughts that had waited patiently for the right moment to be understood. They closed their eyes for just a moment, allowing that forgotten sentence to echo through their heart again. This time, it sounded completely different. It no longer felt like a passing remark. It felt like gentle guidance that had been quietly waiting for today. That was when everything inside them began to shift. For so long, they believed love was measured by grand moments, unforgettable conversations, or perfect timing. But now they saw something far more beautiful. The strongest connections are often built through quiet consistency, the moments when someone unknowingly changes your heart simply by being who they are. Those changes cannot always be seen from the outside. They grow beneath the surface, patiently shaping a person into someone softer, wiser, and more thankful than before. Stay till the end, because this next realization carries the answer they never expected to find. As they reflected on the journey behind them, they noticed a pattern they had overlooked countless times. Every season that seemed uncertain had quietly taught them something valuable. Every delay had deepened their patience. Every unanswered question had strengthened their appreciation for what truly matters. Without realizing it, they had been preparing not just to understand you, but to understand themselves. The tears returned once more, but they felt different again. These were not tears searching for certainty. They were tears of acceptance. Acceptance that genuine affection does not need to rush ahead to prove itself. It grows steadily, becoming stronger with every honest realization. And perhaps that was the greatest discovery of all. They no longer wished they had understood everything sooner. They were grateful that the journey had unfolded one quiet step at a time. Then something unexpected happened. A conversation began around them, ordinary on the surface, yet one simple phrase immediately caught their attention. It was almost identical to the thought that had been resting in their own heart all day. They looked up in quiet surprise. It felt less like an answer and more like a gentle reminder that meaningful truths often appear more than once. Until we are finally ready to receive them. Don't skip, because that brief conversation awakened one final question they could no longer ignore. If these quiet moments have been leading here all along, then what is the one truth I have still not fully seen? That question settled deeply within them. It did not bring anxiety. It brought anticipation. Because they could sense that one final piece was still waiting just beyond the horizon. A realization so simple, yet so powerful, that it would explain why today's tears had never been about looking backward. They had been preparing their heart to finally move forward with clarity, peace, and a hope they had never felt before. And in the next moment, they would discover that the answer had been quietly standing beside them all along, hidden in the one place they had forgotten to look. Just when they thought there was nowhere else to search, they stopped looking outside themselves. That single decision changed everything. The answer they had been chasing was never hidden in extraordinary events or dramatic moments. It had been quietly growing within their own heart, waiting for the day they would become still enough to recognize it. They took a slow breath and allowed every memory to settle without trying to rearrange it. For the first time, they did not ask whether every moment had happened for a reason. Instead, they asked a gentler question: what has this journey taught me that I could never have learned any other way? The answer arrived with remarkable simplicity. It had taught them to value sincerity over certainty. It had taught them that kindness leaves echoes long after words have faded. It had taught them that the people who touch our hearts most deeply often do so without ever realizing the difference they have made. As those thoughts unfolded, the tears that had filled their eyes slowly became a quiet smile. Not a smile of perfect understanding, but one of peaceful acceptance. They no longer felt the need to rush toward tomorrow or rewrite yesterday. This very moment felt enough. Something important is waiting for you, because this realization reaches beyond one person's heart. There are seasons when life appears completely ordinary, yet beneath that ordinary surface, unseen growth is taking place. A seed does not become a tree overnight. It grows quietly, day after day, where no one applauds its progress. In much the same way, genuine affection matures through patience, honesty, and quiet hope. Looking back, they realize that every step, every pause, every unanswered question, every unexpected reminder, had gently shaped them into someone capable of loving with greater compassion than before. That understanding brought unexpected peace. The tears had never been a sign that everything was falling apart. They were evidence that something inside had finally become honest. Sometimes the heart cries because it has stopped carrying unnecessary weight. Sometimes it cries because gratitude has become too deep for words alone. And sometimes it cries because it has finally found the courage to embrace hope again. As they looked toward the future, they no longer imagined it through fear or uncertainty. They imagined it through quiet possibility. They believed that whatever conversations, reunions, or new beginnings life might bring, they wanted to meet those moments with patience, kindness, and an open heart. One final thought rested gently within them. Perhaps the greatest gift of this journey was never simply discovering how deeply they cared. Perhaps it was discovering that real connection inspires people to become more understanding, more compassionate, and more willing to choose hope even when the path ahead is still unfolding. And as the last tear disappeared, they whispered something they had never been able to say before, not because anyone else needed to hear it, but because their own heart was finally ready to believe it. Whatever tomorrow holds, I am thankful for the way this journey has changed me. In that quiet moment, the story did not truly end. It simply became the beginning of a heart that was no longer afraid to hope, no longer afraid to grow, and no longer afraid to believe that the most meaningful chapters are often written one gentle step at a time. Morning has a quiet way of revealing what the night could only prepare. As the first light settled over a new day, something within them felt unmistakably different. The questions that had once demanded immediate answers had softened into peaceful confidence. They no longer measured the journey by how quickly everything would unfold. Instead, they measured it by how much their heart had grown along the way. They found themselves noticing little things they would have overlooked before. A familiar melody. A gentle breeze. The warmth of an ordinary smile from a stranger. Every small reminder seemed to whisper the same truth: meaningful connections are not built through perfect moments alone, they are strengthened by the quiet ways they continue to shape who we become. Don't skip, because this final reflection may become the part that stays with you the longest. There is a difference between waiting with worry and waiting with hope. Worry drains the heart by asking for certainty it cannot control. Hope quietly strengthens the heart by trusting that every season has its purpose. Somewhere along this journey, they crossed that invisible line. Without even realizing it, they stopped waiting for life to prove something to them. They simply chose to become the kind of person who would recognize goodness whenever it arrived. That choice changed everything. The tears that once carried unanswered emotions became a memory of transformation. They were no longer a symbol of confusion. They became a reminder that even the gentlest hearts are capable of remarkable courage. Sometimes courage is not found in dramatic actions. Sometimes it is found in the quiet decision to remain kind after disappointment, to remain hopeful after uncertainty, and to remain open even when the future cannot yet be seen. If these words have found you today, let them leave you with one gentle reminder. Never underestimate the quiet work taking place inside a heart that is learning to love with patience, grace, and sincerity. The greatest changes often happen silently, long before anyone else can see them. And somewhere, as another peaceful day begins, the one whose heart has traveled this journey is no longer crying because of uncertainty. They are smiling through grateful tears, carrying a calm hope that whatever lies ahead will be met with honesty, compassion, and peace. The story does not close with a promise about tomorrow. It closes with something even more enduring. A heart that has discovered hope never returns to being the same. And sometimes, that quiet transformation is the most beautiful beginning of all. Even after the tears had faded, one gentle question continued to linger in their heart. It did not ask, "What happens next?" It asked something far more meaningful: "How do I carry this new understanding into every tomorrow that follows?" That question stayed with them, quietly shaping every thought, every choice, and every hope that rose within them. There are moments in life when nothing around us appears to change, yet everything within us becomes different. This was one of those moments. As they reflected on the journey, they realized that the greatest gift had never been the emotions themselves. It was the clarity those emotions had revealed. They could finally see that every unexpected pause, every unanswered conversation, every quiet season had gently taught them the value of patience. They no longer viewed waiting as empty time. They saw it as a place where character quietly grows, where kindness becomes stronger, and where gratitude learns to take deeper roots. Something important is waiting for you, because this realization reaches beyond one person's story. Think of a river that never rushes to prove where it is going. It simply continues forward, shaping everything it touches with steady grace. In the same way, genuine care leaves its mark little by little. It changes how we listen. It changes how we forgive. It changes how we appreciate the ordinary moments that once seemed too small to matter. They began to understand that the heart is transformed not by one extraordinary event, but by countless quiet moments that gently point it toward hope. A peaceful smile returned to their face. For the first time in a long while, they felt thankful not only for the joyful memories but also for the uncertain ones. Those uncertain seasons had taught them resilience. They had shown them that even when answers arrive slowly, growth never truly stops. Every day had been preparing them to recognize what really matters: not perfection, but sincerity; not haste, but faithfulness; not loud declarations, but quiet consistency. Stay till the end. Because one final realization gently completes this chapter. They understood that the reason today's tears felt so meaningful was never because they had reached the end of a journey. It was because they had finally learned to embrace the journey itself. They no longer needed every question answered before they could experience peace. They no longer needed every path to be visible before they could move forward with confidence. And as they looked ahead with a calm heart, one quiet thought settled within them like the morning light after a long night. The most beautiful chapters are not always the ones we expect. They are the ones that quietly shape us into people who can receive life's greatest blessings with wisdom, humility, and gratitude. With that thought, they stepped into the next day carrying no burden, no regret, and no fear. Only a gentle hope that whatever tomorrow brings, they will meet it with the same compassionate heart that had been quietly transformed all along. And perhaps that is the truest answer this journey was always leading toward, not simply discovering how deeply someone can care, but discovering how deeply a hopeful heart can grow when it chooses love, patience, and peace over every unanswered question.